Widow's Bay is absolutely packed with secrets that are scattered across different episodes, and they're honestly so easy to miss. I've gathered a few key details that I haven't talked about in my previous videos, but that I think are super important for understanding the whole plot. So, you definitely want to stick around until the end of this video. What starts out looking like a simple inside joke from the writers gradually turns into one of the most unsettling clues that something is seriously wrong with this island. According to Tom, Patricia is somewhere around 40 years old, but she later admits that her medical tests put her biological age at just 28. Things get even weirder when Tom uncovers Shep's documents, which claim he's supposedly only 37. Obviously, there is no way that's true. It's pretty unlikely that good genetics or the fresh ocean air can explain this. It makes way more sense to assume that we are looking at the direct consequences of the pact Richard Warren made with an ancient entity back in 1702 to save the colony. However, this slowed down aging is hardly a gift. It feels a lot more like a control mechanism. The entity is intentionally keeping the island's residents in peak physical condition, stretching out their youth and reproductive potential. The longer the community survives, the longer the pact stays in motion. At its core, the island isn't rewarding its people with immortality, it's just trapping them in a cycle that keeps the island itself alive. And by the looks of it, this system has been running flawlessly for over 300 years. Before we dive any deeper, I'd love to ask for your support by subscribing to the channel. I am so close to hitting my first 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription truly means the world to me right now. A huge thank you to everyone who has already hit that subscribe button and supports my content. At first glance, it might seem like the island is putting the most pressure on Mayor Tom Loftess. He constantly finds himself right in the middle of strange, terrifying events. Everything from Shep's attack to a sea witch showing up right at his front door. It all feels like the island is deliberately pushing Tom toward one inevitable choice, signing a new pact with the entity lurking in the depths of Widow's Bay. But there's one specific detail that makes me question whether Tom is the only target or even the main one. The very first person to encounter this new awakening of supernatural forces was actually Shep. Not long before that happened, he was telling his co-worker Lonnie about his divorce. And if we look back at the history of Widow's Bay that Jerry shared with us earlier, a really fascinating pattern starts to show up. It genuinely seems like the island's powers gravitate toward people who have lost their partners. And that might not be a coincidence at all. Just as a reminder, Widow's Bay didn't get its name for nothing. For centuries, local men would sail out to sea for months or even years at a time, leaving their wives waiting on the shore. So many of them never made it back home. Over time, the town became steeped in the loneliness, grief, and despair of women who lost their families. It's highly likely that this generations-long buildup of sorrow eventually birthed something otherworldly, which now unconsciously serves the island's entity. And this is far from an isolated incident. The entity has shown time and again that it will use every single tool at its disposal to maintain total control over the locals. One of the most interesting ways it exerts its influence is through the island's unique plant life, which seems to act as a bridge between the supernatural force and human consciousness. We see a perfect example of this at the hotel. The morning after Tom Loftess first meets William, a mysterious fungus appears on the wall of the captain's room. This isn't just a regular water stain or a sign of neglect. It looks much more like a tool for the island's quiet, almost invisible influence, slowly creeping into the space and changing it from the inside out. It's just as creepy to watch how time behaves in that exact same room. While only a few literal seconds pass out in the real world beyond the door, Kurt experiences a much longer stretch of time inside. A detail like that strongly suggests that, for him, hours went by rather than moments. Plenty of time to get hungry and completely lose touch with the normal flow of reality. At the same time, we get another one of those strange signs. That calendar, showing a picture of a flipped car instead of the usual pretty landscapes or animals, feels like another piece of this hidden control system. Before we move on, I want to circle back to Richard Warren. It is so bizarre that the show's creators are still keeping the identity of his first wife a total secret, especially since she clearly played a fundamental role in the fate of this community. Her name and her history have been completely erased from the island's records. That feels incredibly suspicious because, as we've seen from the museum exhibits, Widow's Bay doesn't usually shy away from the darker or more shameful parts of its history. So why would a town that openly flaunts its sketchy past be so incredibly careful to guard the silence surrounding the memory of the founder's first wife? The answer might lie with that mysterious 43rd passenger on Warren's ship, the one Mayor Tom Loftess nervously forbade anyone from mentioning to the journalist. If the island's official history is built on a lie, from Tom's perspective, his reason for hiding this seems purely practical. If a journalist from the New York Times finds out that the town's founder personally got rid of his own wife, tourists aren't exactly going to flock here. On top of that, we still don't know what actually happened to Lauren. The official story about a tragic accident leaves way too many unanswered questions. And this brings us to an incredible, highly logical theory. What if Tom once found himself in the exact same position as the island's founder, Richard Warren? Except, while Warren acted out of cold pragmatism to seal the pact, Tom's actions might have been pure self-defense. I mentioned in my last video that I suspect Lauren fell under the island's influence after she tried to escape on the ferry. We know Tom Loftess does everything he can to protect his son by keeping him away from the island's creepy secrets, just like his own father did with him. If Tom felt his son was in danger, he absolutely would have taken action. I'm guessing we might be looking at a scenario very similar to what happened with Boyd and Abby and From. That would perfectly explain why Tom is so desperate to shut down any talk of the supernatural, why he is absolutely terrified of digging up the history of Warren's first wife. He isn't just hiding the truth from a journalist, he's hiding it from himself, because admitting the truth means admitting the island broke him long before he ever became mayor. What do you think? What really happened to Tom Loftess's wife? Drop your best theories in the comments below. Also, I'd be so happy if you could give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.